They walked in silence, the thump of their boots echoing off the durasteel walls. The bodies of their comrades lay broken and cooling on the floor. Destrier and Kaz had split off to enter the vents, while Drake, Cassius, and Remen made their way towards the front doors. Drake walked with a confidence he didn't feel. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and cornered. Where many would have lost hope, the Troublemakers pushed on. There were still dozens of the old, young, weak, and sick that still looked to them for protection. Seeing the light spilling through the blasted open doors, Drake stopped, heart pounding. They'd agreed to charge out after Kaz fired her first shot. They'd elected not to use radios as to avoid losing the element of surprise. Turning to Cassius and Remen, Drake felt he shouldn't leave some things unsaid. "Thank you for sticking with me. There's a good chance we die tonight, but with all of you at my side, we have a chance. Victory or death, those are our options. I just want you guys to know that if we go down together, as a family. You're more than just friends to me." Remen grinned. Cassius gave a silent laugh. Typing into his text reader for what could be his final time, Cassius let his mind be spoken for by the too calm automated voice. "You're terrible at giving inspiring speeches." Drake laughed as Remen nodded sagely in agreement. With a brave smile, Drake turned back around to face the ripped open blast doors. "Maybe so, but now we wait." It didn't take long. There was no need for words as the three heard Kaz's rifle. Drake broke into a dead sprint, Cassius and Remen right behind him. His heart pounded with adrenaline as he burst through the tear in the doors. The back of his shield lit up with a display, showing him the dozens of plasma bolts screaming his way. Bracing the shield against his bicep, he pushed forward into the hail of blaster fire. Plasma splashed against his shield, heating it up rapidly as he closed in. Behind him, he heard the chatter of Destrier's LMG as he mowed down the front line in front of Drake. Seizing his opportunity, Drake stomped down on the top of a low barricade, launching himself up over the Geknosion mercenaries. Time seemed to slow as he lifted into the air. In his peripheral vision, he could see Cassius and Remen doing the same, flinging their shields away as they did. Drake felt something bubble up inside. It wasn't fear, or anxiety, or rage, or any other emotion he'd expected. Instead, he was feeling excited. Gravity took hold and Drake lifted his carbine with one hand, jerking the trigger back and spitting durasteel penetrators into the faceplate of a stunned merc. Driving his boots into the dead merc's chest, he landed. Sweeping his shield upwards, he clocked a Geknosion beneath the helmet so hard it lifted them off the ground. Then, while they were still reeling, flung the shield into the faceplate of another to knock them down. With both hands free, Drake dumped his magazine into the target-rich environment in front of him. He scored several lethal hits, but many simply maimed their targets. He felt his excitement building in spite of the perilous situation he was in, as he jammed another mag into his gun and hit the bolt release. A merc saw this and seized their chance, charging Drake down and bowling him over. Reacting in a split second, Drake tucked his knees into his chest and rolled back, kicking the Geknosion away like a bull, accidentally shoving his rifle into the dirt. Quickly scrambling up to his feet, he bashed a Geknosion away with the butt of his rifle, before firing into their faceplate. Boom, boom, boom! Drake's rifle jammed after only 3 shots. Snarling, he grabbed the hot barrel, and using the gun as a club, broke it in half over a Geknosion's helmet, before drawing his sword. By now, Drake should have been worried that he had no gun. But Drake didn't feel worry or fear. He felt elated. Drake let his mind go blank as he flowed into a thrust that slipped underneath a Geknosion's helmet. Ripping his sword free, he let loose, pumping as much soul power into his muscles as they would hold. He began to grin as his sword turned into a blur, limbs and heads flying from the sheer violence of his strikes. He turned to strike, and found himself face to muzzle with a plasma blaster, his sword already arcing down, too slow to stop the merc from pulling the trigger. But, just as the green sun started to form, the merc's faceplate flowed open in a spray of gore, revealing a madly grinning Remen. "I saved your life," he cackled, kicking a muzzle away from himself before blasting the offending merc with tungsten buckshot. Drake laughed at the old man's joke as he sliced through a plasma blaster, and the Geknosion holding it in a fountain of blood and sparks. Just then, he realized how thin the Geknosions had grown in numbers, and that the massive turrets of the Galax were turning in his direction. For a moment, fear overrode his excitement. Then, boom! An almighty shockwave thumped him in the chest as an RPG-700 HEDP round detonated against the turret in a cloud of orangish smoke that was swept away by its own updraft, revealing the mangled turret. However, there was still one more. The sound of crackling electricity drew his attention. The second turret had finished charging, but it wasn't pointed at him. It was pointed up at Destrier's vent. "No!" Drake screamed, but it was too late. With a flash and a sonic boom, the vent Destrier had been shooting from was obscured in a cloud of gray Duracrete dust. Drake's heart pounded in his ears as he began to run towards the Gallic. The turret was swiveling towards the other vent, the one with Kaz inside. He was too far away. He wasn't going to make it. The cannon crackled with electricity, about to fire. Then, like a wounded ghost, Cassius appeared beside the turret, plasma burns covering his body as he rolled a gray, spherical object under the turret before falling back. Crack! It was like the finger snap of a giant as the turret was ripped away by an explosion. In a fit of unbridled rage, Drake sprinted towards the Gallic, tossing his sword aside. Red tinted his vision as a green sun sped his way from the automated plasma turrets, ringing the hull of the Gallic. One burst against his chest, but he felt nothing as he slammed into the Gallic at full force. Without hesitation, he grabbed the barrel of the plasma blaster, not realizing he'd formed a pair of black-clawed gauntlets as he ripped it from its mounting plate. Digging his claws into the side of the still-functioning Gallic's armor, he peeled away the 3-inch thick panel like it was paper. He slammed his fist deep into the ceramic beneath and grabbed something warm before yanking it out. There was a dying hum, and the machine shut off as he looked at the thick, shredded length of main power cable in his hand. Turning slowly around, he saw the other Gallic's plasma turrets warming up, aimed at him. But Remen was in the way. The red faded away, replaced by sheer fear for Remen's life. Sprinting forward, Drake grabbed Remen and hugged him to his chest, shielding the old man with his own body. For a moment, all Drake knew was light and pain as the black armor that had sprouted from his body was burned away, and with it, a good portion of the skin and flesh of his back. Drake tried blinking the spots out of his eyes as he slowly pulled Remen away from him, looking at the stunned, but alive Remen as his vision darkened. "You're alive," Drake muttered in relief, before falling to one knee. He wanted to curse, but his strength was fading fast, his muscles burning like hellfire from overexertion. But still, there was another Gallic to deal with. Slowly, he looked back at the Gallic, barrels charging for another volley. This was the end for them. Boom! The rocket detonated against the Gallic's hull with a lot more force than the last, hull buckling inwards slightly as the machine stuttered, blasters damaged beyond function. Vision tunneling to a pinprick, Drake looked hopefully towards where the rocket had come from. And there he was, clothing torn, bleeding from dozens of tiny cuts, and with a mangled leg. Destrier knelt defiantly as he slid another rocket into the front of the launch tube. Gritting his teeth, he fired. Boom! Shrapnel flew, fire bursting from inside the Gallic as the blast from the HEDP warhead buckled the outer armor inwards. Drake smiled and closed his eyes, blacking out. Mago stared, shocked at the dead display in front of him. He couldn't comprehend what had just happened. He'd lost. Hearing the clunk of a hatch being opened, he looked up. A parasite male's grinning face stared down at him, skin red and blistering. Raising an odd device, the parasite pressed a button. An excited, feminine voice called out, "Here! Hold this!" Mago blinked rapidly. "Hold what?" The parasite disappeared past the lip of the hatch, and one of his men's death spheres bounced in, landing at his feet with a blinking red light. "No!" Mogo whimpered before he was vaporized.